One of the major issues that we all are aware of is the role that money plays in our election process. And I'm sure, like you, I get more emails from people I don't know. I get more calls at my house. And I watch the amount of money that flows into the campaign process. And it's really not the way the founders of our country envisioned this process to work. So the real question we all ask is, so what do we do about it? Well, we can sit and kvetch amongst ourselves. Or there's one group that's actually staked out a leadership position, and they call themselves the New Hampshire Rebellion. I'm delighted tonight that not only a friend, a neighbor, a member of the Plymouth area Democrats, long-term member of the Plymouth area Democrats, but also someone who's invested heavily in talking about a solution is here to join us. Eric is not only a founding member of the New Hampshire Rebellion, he's also a local attorney of note, a great friend of ours, and someone who wants to talk to us about a group that has an answer, and we can all participate in taking our country back. So with that, my friends, Eric MacLeish. If you want, I'll just hold the slides.
Okay. Thank you all very much for having me tonight. It's going to be a very hard act to follow after Mr. Chairman, as well as the speeding representatives, many of whom I'm sure are speeding their way to see this presentation. But I'm very happy to be here tonight. Professor Lawrence Lessig, who wrote the book Republic Lost and is the leader of our organization, hopes to come up and do a much better job of speaking to you at some point in the future. I don't know whether you've had the opportunity to look at Professor Lessig's TED Talks. Has anybody seen that? Yes. I'll read his book, but he's a tremendous man, and he was really the brainchild behind this. So let's talk about it. The New Hampshire Rebellion really, and this idea for this march was formed in October. We were tired of kvetching around and talking about how awful it is and how terrible the influence of money is, and so we actually decided to do something about it. So we started the rebellion, and within 6 weeks, well, it was really in late October, we got it organized. So 480,000 steps between Dixville Notch and Nashua, and we're still counting. And here's our wonderful group. We started up in Dixville Notch. Everybody familiar with Dixville Notch? The Balsams is closed, I can officially report. So I don't know how they're going to have first in the nation next time, because the only people who voted Dixville Notch were employees of the hotel. So it's going to be very interesting what the turnout will be. Maybe nobody. We got the next slide. Here we are. This is the start of our march. And I'm sorry, this isn't the best picture, but that's me. That's my wife, Celia. And Professor Lessig is standing right there. We started on a sheet of ice in a parking lot on a January day when it was actually quite warm. It was about 32 degrees up in Dixville. But a number of people, I think, are going in for hip replacements after walking from that part of the ice over to the road because it was a skating rink. But that's our start. And next one. So I think you've heard about Professor Lessig. Basically, I like to think that Professor Lessig came to the same conclusion that I came to a number of years ago, which is that it's really impossible to think about substantive change in Washington given the way that our elections are funded. We've all seen the results of compromise legislation, of legislation that's been affected by special interests, but until we get to the fundamental way about how we finance elections, the people with the money are going to have to be the people with the access, and they're the ones that are going to have the legislation written in a way that accommodates them. I'm not going to go on for this too long. Either you believe this or you don't believe it. I've actually spoken to Republican groups and even Tea Party groups, and they seem to agree. So this is the one thing that there seems to be some degree of agreement on. And we'll talk about what Lessig means by corruption, because it's not the bags of money being brought in. You know, it's not Abscam. I don't know how many of you saw that. What was that great movie that should have won the Academy Awards? I've forgotten the name of it already. What? American Hustle. It's not like that anymore. How many of you have read This Town, written by Mark Leibovitz, the reporter from the New York Times? Mandatory reading for Plymouth area Democrats. Talks about the way that Washington works. It's based on subtle understandings and paybacks. It's not based on bribery. It's not based upon bags of money. It's a terrific book. I would urge you to read it. This Town. Mark Leibovitz. He's on the PowerPoint. And the spelling of his name. Terrific book. And it's funny, but at the end of it, you feel disgusted. We'll talk a little bit about the book later on. Okay, so whether you care about global warming, whether you're up at the Grafton County Republicans and you care about a flat tax, regardless of what you care about, I don't think it's really going to make any difference in terms of change until we've addressed these fundamental issues. So there's Professor Lessig. He walked the entire 190 miles. I walked 22 miles. I have a schedule for double knee replacement, but I was in the Winnebago a fair amount of the time. We had a Winnebago, and my wife walked 32 miles in 2 days. Next one. So that's Professor Lessig. And he's a curious guy. I mean, this guy started out as an intellectual property professor, and he was very interested in some fundamental changes in the copyright laws. And they need to be changed. They're outdated, and they're, again, infected with special interests. And so he wanted to change them. And when he went to Congress, he finally, after a couple of years, because he's a pretty well-known guy out on the West Coast, he finally got meetings. And he had these great meetings, and then nothing would happen. Because the people who opposed any type of copyright change would simply by their contributions and their presence, they would defeat anything that was new or innovative. And he got very discouraged, so he went to Harvard Law School, and he's now a professor of ethics at Harvard University. He also is the former law clerk to Judge Scalia, possibly one of the most reactionary human beings in the entire world. I'm sure you've seen his recent comments about our very liberal Pope. It's unbelievable. But anyway, he clerked for Scalia. He was a Reaganite, and he doesn't feel that way anymore. But anyway, next slide. So what Lessig talks about is we don't have outright bribery anymore. We have what he calls a gift economy. What do I mean by a gift economy? That there's an understanding that if you go along and if you are in Washington, an elected representative, if you go along with what people want, then your campaign is going to be funded by the insiders. And can you have the next one? Okay, so let's just take a look at what's happened since Citizens United. Now we have a whole different kind of electioneering. Super PACs topped out after Citizens United at $1 billion. Everybody knows what Citizens United is. There are now unlimited amounts of money that can be donated by corporations and labor unions to independent PACs that get involved in the electioneering process. That's triple the money since 2008. $1 billion in the last election cycle. The McCutcheon case. People know about the McCutcheon case that's pending before the U.S. Supreme Court right now? This is a case that's going to be decided any day now. And the argument is that people should be able to give unlimited amounts of money directly to candidates. And from the oral arguments that took place last October, it appears that their First Amendment right that people with unlimited funds are going to be able to give as much as they want directly, not even going through the super PAC process, but directly to the candidate. So look for that decision to come out fairly soon. So Sheldon Adelson will be able to give his money directly to Newt Gingrich. Okay? Average house raise, I'm sure some of you are familiar with these statistics, $56,000 in 1974. 2008, the average race was $1.6 million. Congressmen spend 30 to 70% of their time raising money. They actually have little phone banks right outside the House chambers where you can go, in between votes. And when was the last time we saw a serious debate on C-SPAN? I think it was probably Clarence Thomas. I don't know. But, you just don't have debates. In fact, the agreement with C-SPAN is they can't show the absent seats when people are making the arguments. I mean, so nobody's there. You don't have vigorous debates in Congress. Okay, so we talked about the subtle understandings, and again, that's the spelling of Mark Leibovich, L-I-E-B-O-V-I-C-H. I really recommend that book. We also have part of the other subtle understanding being what? The revolving door. Anybody recognize that intersection? Okay. All right, so Leibovich on page 330 of his book cites this. 3% of retiring congressmen in 1974 remained in D.C. as lobbyists. What's the percentage today? Let's do Senate first. Senate, 60? Well, that's a little aggressive. 50%. 50% of senators remain in Washington as lobbyists. 42% of House members remain. That doesn't count their innumerable staff members and other people who are paid very, very significant amounts of money to work in the lobbying industry. Why did Trent Lott retire? People thought it was a scandal. No. Congress was just about to change the law for the waiting period between the time you could be a congressman and the time you could be a lobbyist from 1 to 2 years. So Trent Lott retired the day before it became 2 years and is now making between $8 and $10 million in Washington. He did not disappear from Washington. one of the most influential people there. Okay. So what would the framers say? Well, Madison talked about factions, about distinguishing between the private interests and the interests of the general public and the interests of the general good. Our framers, and this is something I use when I talk to Tea Party groups, they love the framers. It's all about the framers. There was a distinction, and I do talk to other people about this. I'm a Democrat, but everybody knows that up front. But this is hopefully going to can't happen unless it's somewhat bipartisan. But the framers believed that there was a distinction and that the job of our elected representatives was to promote the public good. And they would be absolutely rolling in their graves because they knew what was happening today. Okay, so let's take a look at how this works. Big oil lobbying expenses between 2008 2012, $1.4 billion. Insurance, $1.8 billion. These are lobbying expenses, reported lobbying expenses. Defense industry, $662 million. Take a guess at Big Pharma. Where does Big Pharma rank?
The top.
The top. What's the figure? $2.6 billion. Okay? Anybody here have Medicare Part D? Oh, good. Well, that's a good program. Nice program. You think the government is permitted to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies on the price? No. What does the CBO say it would save us? If they were just allowed to negotiate. Actually, the VA is allowed to negotiate with Big Pharma. And everybody else is allowed to negotiate with them, but not Medicare. It would have saved us $112 billion over the next decade. $112 billion. Okay? So we could go on and on. What does this lead to? What does this lead to? This in combination with gerrymandering leads to, I don't know if they can move this back at all.
Pull the screen in there.
Pull the screen in?
Yeah. That will shrink it.
Okay, good. So what does this lead to? Okay, it leads to incumbents becoming reelected, incumbents attracting the money. Increasingly, a percentage is coming from PACs. This is the House, and that's the Senate. It's cut off right there. Average total fundraising in the House, as I said, 1.7. The Senate, over $7 million, and an increasing amount coming from PACs. And if the McCutcheon case is decided the way we think it's going to be decided, it'll be coming directly from individuals. Okay, next. No, I don't know. Sorry. 5 times. Okay. Oh, well, that's just a little feature. Okay. All right. So here's the re-election rates. Can you believe it? For a while, there were actually competitive races in the Senate back here. When only less than 60% of them got re-elected. Now the trend is going up. So it's, and if we could just pull it a little bit more. You'll see.
Now move the projector over.
Move it toward you.
What's that?
Come back there.
All right, okay.
There you go.
So you'll see the trend is up. It's heading up towards over 90%, what's anticipated in this election cycle. And so basically, the same people that have been sitting there gridlocked are likely to return. So next one, please. And everybody's familiar with gerrymandering, the process of manipulating. We do it here in New Hampshire. And we don't have a congressional gerrymandering, I don't think, but we do it in our state legislature. But everybody does it. Democrats do it. Republicans do it. If you control both houses of the state legislature in your state, you can redraw the lines. And basically, even if you have 40% Democrats, they're not going to get any seats in Congress. And we do it also in Massachusetts.
Candidates get to choose their voters, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So 2 goals, back to the rebellion, 2 goals. And I'm going to give you, as a special treat tonight, I'm going to give you the inside agenda of the rebellion, but you have to wait and not text during my presentation to get the inside story. But so I'm going to tell you the stated goals, and then if you're good, I'll tell you what's really happening. Is to get every presidential candidate campaigning in New Hampshire to clearly articulate what they're going to do about corruption. Now, we're not naive, okay? We don't expect Hillary Clinton or Marco Rubio or Chris Christie, God forbid. Yeah. We don't expect them to come in and say, oh, I'm all against, I don't care about corruption. They'll give some BS answer. We all know that, and won't be responsive to the question. But we have some hidden plans that, again, you're going to hear about at the end. But a lot of what we're trying to do is just education, because how many of you run into people who say, well, I love local government, because local government works, but Washington, I give up with this. Nothing that we can do. It's hopeless. And it's just hopeless. So we have some ideas on how that can change, but it's complicated. And we'll talk about how we can actually do something about this, how we could fix this so that money doesn't become the influence that it is in Washington. So the education part of what we're trying to do is significant. So, okay, public perception. Yeah, again, this is interesting to me. Corruption was ranked number 2 in the last presidential election by voters as an important issue. Number 2, what they perceive as corruption in Washington. Yet it was absent from the debates. It's basically absent from the media, or has been. And this is a very important issue to people, but they don't feel that there's any viable solutions. So part of our role is to give them those solutions. Hello? Oh, it's getting more and more tilted. Okay. All right. So why are we doing this in New Hampshire? Well, there's a lot of good people that live in New Hampshire, a lot of independent and pragmatic thinkers, long history of supporting reform. We're one of the few states that has in our Constitution the right to rebel, which is, yeah. So why else do you think we're in New Hampshire? Anyone want to take a guess?
Small state.
Small state. Well, that's true. We can make a big impact in a small, politically important state. But why else? Next one.
First primary.
Who's this?
Granny.
Granny Dean. Where was she from? New Hampshire. What did she do? Right now, she walked across the country.
Yes.
And she was a remarkable figure and New Hampshire resident and our inspiration. So this march that we started was in honor of her. Okay. All right. And she completed when she was 90 years old. Amazing, amazing person. Next one, please. Okay, so we started our walk. We planned it 60 days in advance, as I said. 50 people started on the walk on January 11th, 190 miles to Nashua. How many people do you think walked all the way? 19. What was the oldest person who walked all the way? How old was he or she? 77. Okay? All right. Yeah. And there I am at the Errol Motel. I put my comments on TripAdvisor. I won't say anything more. But it's not bad. And people there are wonderful. Okay, so that's my wife, Celia Wolverton, who wishes she could have been here. As you'll see, there's a lot of Subarus and BMWs parked in that icy parking lot. So this was a well-heeled group. There were people there from all ages. This was a gentleman who's a lawyer from Vermont, 75 years old, still in active practice, carried that sign 190 miles in some pretty miserable condition. I spent a nice couple of days talking to him. This was such, you know what was so good about this? You actually felt, even though you weren't going to change the Constitution, but that you were doing something. And so every honk from a car, every wave, it became significant and important. It was a really, and we're going to talk about what we're going to be doing shortly. But the people that were on this walk were amazing people. I wish I could have stayed longer. And Celia wanted to do the whole thing. So what we learned is that the walk had to be visible. We were very visible. We developed, and this is where Larry is really unbelievable, his crew, because we have a full-time executive director. I'm on the advisory board for the organization, which is, I think, 7 or 8 New Hampshire residents. We're about to have our second meeting. So we wanted to saturate the New Hampshire press so that people would know who we were. So after about the 3rd day, which I wasn't on, but there were signs welcoming the Granny Pete walkers. Even the 1st day, the plow drivers would honk, and we had all these signs that who could be against campaign finance reform and trying to eliminate money from politics. So it was really, really encouraging. Many people, we had more people than we anticipated, so sometimes we were in these small towns, there weren't beds in hotels. It was going to be sleeping outside or in a car in somebody's house. Nobody ever had to sleep in their cars. So it was really amazing how many people welcomed us. Okay, next one. Our media reach, this was amazing. I don't understand half these things. Anybody know what a thunderclap is? Nobody here knows what it is? It's a way of instantly announcing through Facebook and all of your friends on Facebook and all to their friends something about the New Hampshire thunderclap. And somebody pressed something on their cell phone in the middle of, I think it was Sunday or Monday, and something went out to 3.2 million people via Facebook and thunderclap. It's absolutely remarkable, the reach of the social networking. But we had all kinds of, and this is the maximum reach, is blog posts, 239,000 people. Our broadcast radio reach, these are stories about the rebellion, 2.2 million. Broadcast TV, we were constantly on WMUR, media web, media TV. We had 3 million potential people that could have heard about us. I don't know whether any of you heard about us when we were doing the march. I'm seeing, well, you heard a few people heard about it. This was organized in 6 weeks.
Was it Laura Conoy?
What?
Was it Laura Conoy or Diane Reed?
Diane Reed.
Okay.
Yeah, Diane Reed. We tried to get Laura Conoy, but she wouldn't do it. I don't know. We'll have to talk to her. But anyway, it was fantastic. The reach, and this was 6 weeks in the planning, and we reached and people, unfortunately, you have a big thing like the walk and then things die down, which is why we have some other plans. But it was really amazing. We raised in 6 weeks $150,000. We each had our own, within days of forming this, we had some computer guy bring up individual web pages. So I think they sent it out automatically to our contact list asking for money, but we were able to personalize it, show pictures. And so we were able to raise $150,000. This was not just Ben and Jerry. Ben Cohen came on the mic. These were just people on the wall. And their friends, and maybe a little bit from Ben Stonehill, but it wasn't that much. But we raised $150,000, which is amazing, just amazing to me. We got, maybe this should be the first one when I do the Republican presentation. We got coverage on Al Jazeera. Bradford County Republicans might run me right out of the room. There's a great thing on Bill Moyers. He's still doing web stuff, and a great thing on Bill Moyers. I don't know what Boing Boing is. It sounds like some sort of, marijuana promotion organization. But we were on there. Boston Globe, The Atlantic, Daily Beast, The Guardian, Huffington Post, New Republic. Oh, there's two I missed. I wrote a piece for Colorado, because Colorado is a place we're thinking of going, and I sent it out to the Daily Camera in Boulder, which I thought they're going to publish my guest editorial for sure. In Boulder, they'd have to. And the Denver Post, and they both published it on their op-ed pages. It was really amazing, and we got a lot of response, and now we're getting a Colorado chapter. So it just shows you that you don't have to sit around and kvetch about this. There's things you can do. Next one. In New Hampshire, I don't know why the Colebrook Chronicle is a reach of 0. I don't have an explanation for that. There are people in Colebrook still, and they're really nice. We stayed our first night at the Colebrook Country Club. Again, my comments are on TripAdvisor. But it's a nice place. But anyway, the Eagle Tribune, I guess that's Lawrence, but they reach in New Hampshire as well. Next one, we've got a whole bunch. Laconia, Daily Sun, these are the reaches in the articles. And again, there's nobody in North London.
Nobody in London there.
No, we couldn't get the figures, that's what it is. Nobody in that. These are a patch of the local papers. Next one. So we got like a lot of coverage, and people heard about us. And it was really, it was really unbelievable. Next one. Okay, so, through all the broadcast contacts, excluding social networking, we figure about 625,000. So, get the next slide, Bob. Interesting facts on us. 190 miles, 207 through walkers, 77 was the oldest walker, he went all the way. Youngest walker were Larry Lessig's twin sons, 10 years old. Coldest temperature, we were blessed. It wasn't that cold, 3 degrees in Concord. We had 10,739 supporters on our webpage. Estimated between social media and regular media, 3.2 million reach. New Hampshire media reached 625,000. 200 walkers from 20 different states and 2 foreign countries, organized in 6 weeks. Not bad. Approximately $150,000. I mentioned that. We had an online ad during the Super Bowl. I don't even know who will be watching the Super Bowl online. It was not one of those ads you saw on, is it CBS or whatever. But it was online. People watched it. Our executive director is in California right now, even in furthering enhancing our ability to carry out our message. And I'm really not the technical person, but what they can do now is absolutely unbelievable. It's like the marketing they do with my kid in college. The sponsors will send her some shoes to wear. If she has a certain number of likes on Facebook. I don't know whether you guys saw that on Frontline the other night, but it's amazing what people are doing and the power of social networking and reaching people. So we want to harness that power and use it, particularly with younger people. Where are my PSU students? They don't have company.
They're off this week.
Oh, they left.
They're off this week.
Good. Well, particularly with younger people, this is how you get younger people excited about change. And you show it's in their interest to fix the mess we have left with them. And so we've got a lot of young people involved in this organization. So we can just continue. Future plans, we're going to do 2 more walks in January between now and, I should say, 2016. We've already gotten, as a result of the publicity, we've gotten so many calls about next year that we're actually going to have to plan different routes because we anticipate we'll have more than 1,000 people walking next year. And if we have that, there just aren't any places to stay up there. So we're going to have different routes. We're working on that right now. I'd like to invite all of you to join us on our 16-mile July 5th walk. Our goal is 1,000 participants. That's going to be on the seacoast. I think we'll easily get that. So no sensible change. I'm stealing Laurie's PowerPoint here, will occur unless we rebel and end this corruption. Okay? And last slide. That's us. So that's the official part. Now I'm going to give you the inside story because you didn't text on it, like my students, okay? How could this play out? How could this play out? We know that we need to eliminate things like gerrymandering, to end the influence of money on campaigns. We know we need what? What do we need in light of Citizens United? It's a decision under the First Amendment. So in order to deal with this, we need a constitutional amendment. Do people know what that requires?
3/4 of the states.
That's one way. That's called a constitutional convention, which has never happened in the history of our country. It's been threatened on a number of occasions, but it's never actually happened. The other way is to get Congress to call a constitutional convention. What does that require? 2/3 vote of Congress,
Both houses.
both houses, for a constitutional convention. Then 3/4 of the states to ratify it. How many people think the second way of amending the Constitution has a snowball's chance in hell with a 92% incumbency rate? Anybody here think that? So what's the answer? I know it seems almost impossible to think about, but a petition by the states, oh, the secretary's already left. Oh, this is a bad sign. Good night. A petition by the states directly to Congress under Article 5 to call a convention. Lessig is also the head of a group called Call Convention, which you can get callconvention.com. It's a terrific group. I'm also involved with that. Callconvention.com. So people think that's impossible. How many petitions do you think there are pending before the House Judiciary right now in Congress that have not been acted upon calling for a constitutional convention? This, I'm giving you like really deep inside information, or you can't tell anybody about this, okay? All right? There are 34 states are required before you can get the call, okay? How many do you think petitions are there before the Judiciary Committee? 33. What's the problem? The language of the Constitution is silent on the form of the petition. So what do you suppose these 33 petitions that have been passed by state legislatures, what do you suppose, I'm sorry, 2/3 of the states have to call it. What do you suppose they're asking for amendments on? Balanced budget?
More guns.
More guns? Abortion? Okay, but some are what we call clean calls, where the states are just petitioning for a constitutional convention. Now, this came up before our great and general court here in New Hampshire, the legislature, on bills. I think there was a public hearing on it a couple weeks ago. SB 36 and SB H. There's a House bill. There are two House bills. Yeah, they're going nowhere though, as I understand it, because there really was no significant. Maybe I'm wrong, but I hope they're going somewhere. But it was a Citizens United. It was a Citizens United.
The trouble is, if you call, at least in New Hampshire, if you call for a convention, it can open the door to.
Well, we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about that in a second. That's what the argument against the convention is. It could open up everything. But it's actually interesting because in order for anything to get through this constitutional convention, you need 3/4 of a vote from the states. So are the anti-abortion crowd and balanced budget crowd going to get their amendments through? There's no chance, absolutely no chance of that. So what the New Hampshire Rebellion, and again this is secret, is positioning itself to do is to try to be a facilitator in a constitutional convention, to bring groups together, because when you start talking to them, what they really want is a process that is fair, that is untainted by money. The gun people, the balanced budget people, all these people that have arranged for their state legislatures to file petitions, they all believe that they will win, but they can't possibly win because you need 3/4 of the states and the state delegations to approve it. So, and I understand the opposition, the runaway convention, that's always been the argument, but there's also another risk, that we allow this corruption to continue. And what is the risk of that for this country? I would suggest that's a great, significant risk. I was listening to Grover Norquist, one of my favorite people in the world, talking on the Commonwealth Club radio the other day, and he was saying, the Democrats are so stupid. What we did with our money is we just didn't put it into the federal elections. Put it into all these state elections and even local elections for school board, because they spot people who are going to have a future in politics. So they have put money into state legislatures. So they have the whole thing gerrymandered so well. The chances of a Democrat, 52% of Americans voted for Democrats in 2012 for the House, and the reason that that's not reflected in what happened in Washington is because of these gerrymandered legislative districts. And Grover Norquist says, and he's right, he said, we've got it so tied up that there's not going to be, there can't possibly be a Democratic House, no matter how popular the president is, in the next 10 to 20 years. And this president right now, you know, for reasons that I think are totally unfair and not his fault, but he is his popularity is sinking. So I'm very concerned about what's going to be happening in 2014 in November. And I'm going to be writing a lot of checks that I really shouldn't have to write. So the Constitutional Convention's done this. Interesting. There are 33 petitions. There's going to be some litigation that I'm probably going to be involved with as a trial lawyer, trying, once the 34th petition comes in, to try to file a petition for mandamus, which is a way to force Congress to call a convention. The language in Article 5 is completely vague. It just says a petition. There has to be a petition from 2/3 of the states to call a convention. What does that mean? If you petition for a specific purpose, is that adequate? Or does that mean you call the convention and then consider that? Or does that mean the convention can only be called for the, you know, pro-gun, balanced budget, anti-abortion stuff? It's just unclear. But we've got some really heavy-duty legal scholars. I probably shouldn't use their names, but really heavy-duty people that are looking at this. And this is a case that could go all the way to the United States Supreme Court. I think ultimately Congress is going to have to be forced into doing this, because either way, whether the states file these petitions directly with Congress or Congress by some miracle amends the Constitution, you know, no matter, the way I see it is that Congress isn't going to do anything. So some sort of legal action is probably going to have to be necessary.
Who forces Congress?
Well, the federal judiciary, federal courts, United States Supreme Court. I mean, that's the only entity that can force Congress to do it. But whether or not this Supreme Court would do it or would duck it, who knows? This Supreme Court is part of the problem. When I was in law school, you know, in the 1940s, I mean, there were some legal giants there.
Separation of powers.
Well, it wasn't, you know, you may not have liked, you know, some of these justices, but you felt as though they were trying to interpret the law. You can't say that now. I mean, I think it's a completely politicized court. That's just my opinion. Nobody else I know in this room shares that. So this is exciting, and we want to encourage all of you to be involved. And Larry is a terrific guy, and you know, he's just such an inspiration. And, you know, he says, the bad part is that he says, what's the chances of this passing? The Constitutional Convention getting these amendments through? We've never had one. Unfortunately, he puts the odds at 10%. But after our march, he was more towards 20% because he was so angry. So I hope you will join us. I really hope you will, because the only way to change this country is to go to the root of the problem. Larry's organization is also called Root Strikers. The root of the problem is money. To get money out of it. And there's other things people talk about, term limits, Republican flip. I don't know. If that's what it took to get it through, reasonable term limits, if that's what it took to get money out of politics, I would listen. But I'm not the decision maker. Yes?
Once a constitutional convention is called, how are the delegates selected?
It's very interesting. They've thought about this, and because they're getting close to this figure, and there was a time when a lot of balanced budget amendments were coming in. And so Orrin Hatch drafted rules for the convention, which are actually pretty good. They call for non-political people to be elected by the states to the convention. Sorry about that, well, they're talking anyway. But to non-political citizens to be elected who have not served in political office to be elected as representatives of the state. And there'd be elections for it. It wouldn't be, you know, be elections. But Congress, we think, has to draw up the rules. But Article 5 is all of one paragraph. I mean, it's like how you change this thing. And it's one paragraph. It doesn't say. But I think that if we could, the best approach, I believe, is for New Hampshire to call, not for an election on Citizens United, because overturning Citizens United would be important, but would it solve the problem of the revolving door? Would it solve the problem of the lobbyists showing up at 9 o'clock to work on the legislation and then having the fundraiser at 5 p.m.? It wouldn't do anything about that whole thing. Right. It wouldn't do anything. What? Right. Well, Citizens United would help, but it wouldn't solve a lot of the other problems. Yes, overturning it would help. It would get large amounts of money. You know, it would give Congress back the authority to regulate. But there's still many other issues that have to be addressed. Okay?
If they open up a constitutional convention, could the Second Amendment be called for to be repealed?
Yeah, but would that happen? Some people would. Okay, well, I might join you. But, you know, and the polling on that is really interesting. I mean, look at what happened this past summer on the gun control legislation. legislation that was supported for background checks for private sales and gun shows. What percentage of Americans supported that? 90% of Americans supported that, and it went down in the United States Senate because of those cowards who were afraid to stand up to the NRA. I mean, it's disgraceful.
Yeah, but these gun lobby people don't get together. You understand?
No, it's true. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. They don't get together, and I can't tell you, you're absolutely right. There's so many Article 5 groups and campaign finance reform groups out there in Common Cause, but Common Cause won't talk to people. Yeah, they really won't talk to people who are on the other side of the aisle. And the only way you can ever get this done is in some sort of bipartisan basis. I mean, I met with one of the Tea Party leaders, Pam Tucker, a couple of months ago about New Hampshire. You know, she's a Tea Party, and I was able to have a conversation with her that I thought she was bright. I disagreed with her about everything, but she agreed on the process, and the process is fundamentally corrupted and has to change on a federal level. The closer you get to home, the politics are a lot better. But on the federal level, which does affect a substantial part of our lives, it's beyond hope. So you're seeing some, I think, principled people on the right who are not traditional bedfellows on this issue wanted to be part of this. And there were a number of Tea Party people that were on the march, particularly when it was closer to the south. And I'm not saying there's more Tea Party people down there. I think there's probably more up north. I don't know. But there were a lot of them that came out and marched. I mean, you got to have a dialogue. I mean, there are issues, there are common ground issues here. So there's so many groups. So we want to try to be, and this is ambitious, the facilitator with all of those groups so they can act together. But you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely, I totally agree with you about the anti-gun people. Yeah. But do egos ever get involved?
Never.
Like, I don't want to sit next to that person, because they're a Republican or they're a Tea Party people. I mean, can't do this with Democrats. Can't do it. It can't just be a Democratic issue. And so it's going to take, I don't know, more women in politics probably.
Fair enough.
Well,
Fair
when
enough.
Putin comes into the United States and the Tea Party...
He'll get it done.
We'll all be lost.
I like you.
Who will do it?
Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much for having me. NewHampshireRebellion.org. Stop talking, start walking.
Thanks. I think we're all set. Yeah.